Hello and welcome to In the Light, Growing Your Soul with me, Anna Isabel. I'm a psychological astrologer as well as an analytical hypnotherapist. And I am joined again today by Cait Johnson. Hello, Cait.
Hi, so good to be here.
Well, last time that we spoke, we were talking about the wonders of autumn, all the other seasons, but particularly autumn, because we were enjoying autumn at the time. And here you are, just on almost on the eve of the solstice and Christmas. And we thought it would be a wonderful opportunity to talk about Yuletide traditions. So tell us about what the Yule is, because that's a term we often hear, but not everyone knows what the Yule is.
Right. Well, it's an ancient festival, and a lot of the traditions of Christmas actually come straight from the pagan past. To me, because there's so many religious differences on our planet, it's lovely to celebrate the conjunctions of Earth and Sun that nobody can argue with. I mean, the truth of solstice is, right before it, it's the longest day, absolutely longest night and shortest day. And it's usually cold, depending on where you live. The solstice, everything turns around. And back in the day, people believed they had to stay up all night making lots of noise and dancing around the fire to help bring the sun back. Otherwise, it would just gradually wane and fade away. So to me, Yuletide, which is the old name for solstice, is really about honoring the dark, but celebrating the light. And when you think about it, you look at Hanukkah, you look at Christmas, even Kwanzaa, they are all related to bringing back the light. And so to me, it's a joyful time. I love bringing in nature, pine cones, fresh greenery, crystals that look like little ice points that don't melt. It's magical. And it's especially, of course, a time for children to celebrate. So I don't know if I ever told you about one of my books, Celebrating the Great Mother. Shameless plug. It was written for parents to use with their children. And there are tons of wonderful ideas of things to do with your family. But I know a lot of childless people who use it just because it's fun. There are a lot of ideas, things to do. So do you want specifics about what I do?
Yes. Let's hear about some of those fun ideas.
Okay, well, for me, one of the most meaningful things I do is on the eve of solstice, the longest night, I turn all the lights off. All of them. And there are a lot of lights in a house, you may have noticed. And I sit in the dark for a while and really just let myself get calm and quiet. This is such a frantic season. It's really lovely to have a time just to sit and be quiet and calm and peaceful. And then after I've done that for a while, I light one candle. And you'd be amazed when your eyes have gotten used to the dark, what a difference one candle makes. And I feel like all of us are little lights in the darkness if we see ourselves that way. What a lovely idea, that even just one of us can make a positive difference to the world. So there's that. And then I, of course, go around and turn on all the lights. I have a passion for fairy lights. Love them. They're all over my house all year long. But yeah, that's one thing.
Funnily enough, you're talking about sitting in the darkness and then having the candle. There's something I love about doing about this time of year, which is almost like a countdown to the solstice. And it begins because I get up fairly early. And at this time of year, it's not difficult to be up before the sun. So from about the time when I'm up at around sunrise, so let's say it's around the equinox, because I'm often up before that. I'm often up around 6. And then by that point, the sunrise is getting to be more like 7 in the morning, etc. And I start looking every day at the actual time for sunrise and the time for sunset. So every day I'm noticing that minute's difference either side. And it gets to the point at this time of year, I love it because I don't turn on the lights in the morning. I have the torch on my phone. And I love having my shower with just the torch, and allowing myself to just enjoy that. Comes to meditation and I light a candle. So like you, and it's beautiful because by this point, it's not quite as dark as it was, but it's not at this time of year. That happens. I'd be meditating around 7:30 in the morning, and the sunrise today was, I think, at 8:04.
Right.
So the sky is just beginning to get light. And I've got this one candle, and it is such an evocative feeling. And I know the day of the solstice, suddenly it's going to change. And then comes between then and spring, looking at that time changing with the days getting longer. And it's something that I started to do last year, and I absolutely love it. Just to chart the path of the sun and watch the point at which it's going to turn back. And then it's coming back. I can see it.
I think most people have lost touch with those patterns. And the moon too. I love watching the phases of the moon. I try to look at it every night when I can and watch it waxing and waning. And now it's very much waning, I believe. We had the new moon yet? I can't remember. Anyway, it's dark at night.
23rd.
That's right. Right. So yeah. So for me to connect with that patterning is beautiful. Also, you brought up something great because you're in that sort of twilight time, which happens, of course, at dusk and dawn. I love this word. It's very liminal. Ooh, what a pretty word. It's the in-between time. It's the time when shamans love to do work because it's neither here nor there. You know, it's not really sunrise yet and it's not really night yet. To me, that's magical. And all of the big holy days by my sort of pagan calendar are liminal times, times of shift. And to me, that's what magic really is being aware of and inhabiting those shifts ourselves. Can we talk about rocks?
Yes, let's talk about rocks.
So this is winter, obviously. Water turns hard as stone. You can hurt yourself badly if you fall. It's a time to pay very special attention to your bones, but it's also a time to let stones ground and calm us. One of the things I love to do on solstice eve, I love to gather a stone, any stone, and they're all over the place, and just hold it in my hand. And sometimes I will hold it while I'm in the dark. It's a very slowing down, grounding thing, having a stone in your hand. Everything is, of course, moving. We know that. Atoms are constantly dancing and moving, but stones look really slow and they will outlast us. So after I've had some time with this stone, I usually put it in a special place and I keep it till the next year. And the following solstice, I'll return it to the earth and pick up a new one to hold and make friends with. Have you ever built a little like a structure of stones, 1, 2, 3, 4, if you can make it without them falling over? Do you ever do that?
I haven't, no. I think the closest I've come to that is sandcastles as a child.
Fun. Well, you know, the thing is, I believe it's never too late to have a happy childhood. And I love doing, you know, childlike things. That's what I love. Anyway, I always at this time of year will build one of those little structures leading up. It's tricky. You have to really be slow and balanced or it falls right over. But I try to honor the north and stone and winter by doing that.
So what you're doing there is you are working with something of the earth that's actually hard, like winter. So it's the connection between a hard stone, like this one.
Love it. That's a pretty one.
Yes, I love this. I brought it home from our last holiday, and it sits here with me to remind me to go back. So it's the connection between that hardness of winter and something that is of a hard texture. Is that the idea?
the idea. And it's also connecting with our own bones, which obviously are hard and which outlast us. I believe that winter's the bone time. If you look at the trees, once they've lost the fluffiness of leaves, all you see are their beautiful kind of skeletal bones. And I find it just breathtakingly beautiful. So, of course, every season's my favorite when I'm in it. You know how that is. Yeah.
I think very similar in that respect. Looking at trees at this time of year, I've always loved to, because you could see the bark, you could see the texture, you could see the color of the bark, the structure of the tree. But there is another bonus. It's a lot easier to see birds. And so you can hear them singing and then see them. So it's a good time, I think, to be able to match the song to the birds, because you can actually see where the song is coming from. I've always appreciated that.
Yeah, it's so fun to learn the names of things. I mean, to me, that's a big pleasure. And you can see the nests more easily now too. And I just have a thing for bird nests. If I ever find one that's fallen, I usually save it, and I have nests all over my house. So you're right. Most of us just don't know the animals or birds or trees or plants that we live with. I just bought actually a field guide to trees for a friend for solstice, so that because he really loves going out in nature, but now he can look at even just the bare branches and find out what kind of tree it is. So that's fun too.
I can really see children enjoying building their little structures with stones. I like that. So what else can we do that's fun?
Well, let's talk about Yule trees. Oh my gosh. So we're talking about all the bare trees. And yes, that's true. But then we have the fir trees and the pines, and they're green. And you can imagine how our ancestors must have loved that when it looks like everything around you is dead. It's so sweet to have this lively green thing, you know, and it connects with the world tree, which is how some Norse people worship God, goddess. You know, it's a reminder that life goes on, even in the midst of the cold, even in the midst of the sun waning every day. It will come back. And meanwhile, we can bring a tree in and love it. The smell is so fantastic. I don't like the idea of like factory tree farms. I go to a family run one, and the people there are so sweet. And to me, yes, fake trees, maybe they're better for the environment. I'm not sure of that. In my town, they mulch the trees and use them as mulch in the public gardens here. So you don't waste a thing. I often take the needles after we're finished with the season, and I make things with them. By the way, can I share a recipe?
Oh, please.
I've got so many. Okay. So there's one for cleaning and one for reviving your own body. So if you want a vitamin C heavy drink that tastes really interesting and good, you go out where there are white pine trees. They're the ones with the really long, graceful needles. And you gather a handful, crush them a little, put them in a mug, and cover with boiling water and let it sit for, I'd say, 10, maybe 15 minutes. You want to make sure that your tree is not near a highway so that it doesn't have heavy metal pollution, and hopefully it hasn't been sprayed with something. But if you drink that, it's got so much vitamin C and so much really positive tree energy that's a good thing to do in winter. And the other thing that I just learned about is if you chop up any kind of green tree, fir tree, balsam fir is what I happen to have right now, put it in a jar, cover with vinegar, just plain old cheap vinegar, let it sit for about 3 weeks, shake it every once in a while. And then you have something to put in a spritz bottle that you can use. It's an all-purpose, totally great antibacterial, antiviral. You can clean surfaces with it, and it smells really good. So
I'm good because you're using the pine needles.
Yeah, they have antibacterial properties.
Yes, yeah. That's absolutely brilliant. And we know that vinegar is wonderful for descaling and breaking things down. So I love that. Thank you. That's fabulous. Can you tell us anything about the custom of the Yule log?
Yes, that's unfortunately, although I have a fireplace, I'm not allowed to use it. It's been capped. So back in the day, they would take a huge hunk of wood. I mean, when we say a Yule log, I mean, we're talking really sizable that would burn all night, drag it home, put it in the fireplace, and burn it throughout the solstice. And then the next day, you save a piece of it and you use that next year to help light the one that you bring in. So it's again, it's about bringing home light and warmth and safety to your home and celebrating the woods. I mean, the French have the bûche de Noël, the little Yule cakes that look like logs. I love that. They often have little, like, you know, marzipan toadstools and stuff on them. It's darling, sweet idea. If you don't have a fireplace that you can use to burn a Yule log, you can eat, you know, a cake that looks like a Yule log.
You can, yes, you can have that. So that's really, that's wonderful, because all of these things again are connected with bringing warmth and light, but it's also that link with nature and with the earth. Wreaths are the other one. So tell us about wreaths.
Well, I love wreaths because they're round. I have such a thing about circles of any kind. Roundness is like the pattern of life to me. It's the circle of the seasons. It's round like the sun. It's round like the moon. And people used to make wreaths to protect their homes. They would put them on the door. They'd make them obviously of greens or whatever, and decorate them with things that were images of prosperity and safety and pleasure and fun. And it would be a little like a door protector that you would have throughout the season, again, to invite only good energies into your home. I think because it's such a cold, dark time, feeling safe and protected was really important to our ancestors. They didn't have central heating, you know, it was a cold time. And so they would do whatever they could to encourage a feeling of being safe, protected, and abundant. That's the other thing. Some people put little like dollar bills, from I'm an American, or, you know, pound notes, whatever, in the wreath to encourage more prosperity and abundance in the coming year. I think that's a lovely idea. Or coins, you know, whatever you want to tuck into the branches. So, yeah.
And of course, that's something that could be really fun to do as well, is to make a wreath. Interestingly, one of the things that I haven't done for a very long time was to cut holly and then to bend it round a wreath. I just used to love to do that, and then I'd get some ivy and have that around as well. So there was the holly and the ivy. So it was a lovely thing to do, and it's not as difficult as you would think.
I'm sort of a wimp, and I used to try to play with holly, but it's so prickly that I decided I didn't want to. But you're right, holly and ivy. In fact, there's one of our oldest traditional carols called The Holly and the Ivy. And it's a big pagan symbol of, you know, the shifting from the light half to the dark half to the light half. And it's beautiful. People back in the day used to twine ivy all over their homes at solstice. And of course, the holly with its red berries became a symbol for Christianity. If you listen to the words of the song, it talks a lot about, you know, the berries being red as blood and Mary having Jesus to do sinners good, all that. But it started in a much older time than that.
Yes, and I think that it is natural when you're being introduced to new concepts, as in that pagan time, Christianity, etc., to blend the two together, because you have the customs with which you grew up and still make sense to you. Because the reason these customs make sense is because they are of this northern hemisphere. This is what we're talking about, is the northern hemisphere. I'd be interested to know more about what happens for the equivalent, which would be the summer solstice in the south. But we're here, we're in the north. This is our experience. And so these are our customs and our traditions for dealing with this hard time. And you were talking about that particular carol, but there are other carols too, that there's so many English carols that feature people going from door to door.
Bustling.
Yeah, that exactly. And that custom is there because in an agrarian society, there is no work and people are going to starve. And it's made me actually wonder whether perhaps this isn't the nature of gift giving. If this isn't where it comes from, the idea that at this time of year we need to be charitable because people were out of work and had no money and would rely on the charity of others to get through the winter.
Absolutely. If you've ever read or seen any of the many, many versions of Charles Dickens' Christmas Carol, A Christmas Carol, it's all about how we want to be abundant and generous at this time of year. But you're right. Back in the day when there was no more food growing, if you hadn't saved enough and preserved it, salted it, dried it, canned it, whatever you could do, then you went hungry. So yeah, you're right. Generosity, it's a really lovely thing. Sadly, our culture has turned this whole holiday into sort of this awful commercial, fun fest. And that's really those weren't the roots of it, to prove how wealthy you were by giving lots and lots. It was about generosity and helping people.
It was, but there was something else too, because there was the idea of the Saturnalia and the Lord of Misrule that comes in and is about turning the world upside down. And we still see vestiges of that in the West Country in England, with people dressing up in costumes and sometimes somewhat risque. And that's quite a traditional thing. And then on New Year's Day, jumping into the sea or rivers. Do you know where that comes from?
Jumping into the sea and rivers, that I do not know, but I'm fascinated by like the hunting of the wren. I'm fascinated by mummers. I mean, these go back hundreds and hundreds of years. They are pre-Christian. People wearing horns, antlers on their heads. It goes back to, Herne the Hunter, the Wild Hunt, which is all this time of year. I really love English traditions. In America, it's all about Santa Claus, we've lost all of that. So yeah, I'm fascinated. Do you know about the origin of jumping into the river?
No, I was hoping you did, but the idea of the Lord of Misrule, I think, is a very significant one because, again, at this time of year when everything is so dark, to have this opportunity to turn the world upside down and it's about silliness and fun, etc. It's much more hedonistic. And I think it really does get you through that hard time. And although we're not doing it in that way anymore, you think about all the Christmas parties and you think about the I guess the more hedonistic side of our Christmas celebrations, and it's still there. We can't get away from that Lord of Misrule, can we?
No, there are all those silly cartoons of people with lampshades on their heads after a fun party. But there's another aspect to it. If you're oppressed, if you're a servant, for instance, and you have very wealthy people who have power over you, how liberating for one of the servants to be crowned the Lord of Misrule and to be able to, act lippy toward your employers. And it was okay. To me, I think it was a very important, like a way to get rid of a lot of anger and tension. So can you imagine doing that in some of our big corporations, having one of the peons, like the male guy, suddenly he gets to whip the CEO with a evergreen branch? I don't know. Anyway.
Well, I think I would take it a step further, and I would love, at least for one day, for a normal person to be president or prime minister of the country. I think that would be a very interesting experience. And I wonder what would happen.
I wonder what laws they would enact. There's a thought. Maybe it would be better. You never know.
Perhaps a day of anarchy might be.
That's really what it was. Yeah, it was a day of anarchy. And exactly. it was okay. I love that.
Yeah. So it was the idea of turning everything upside down and on its head, which again, I think why I keep thinking about it is because it's this Saturn time, and Saturn is so serious, and it is so much about order. And here you have that being turned on its head at Saturn's time. And I think, what better way of getting through this than doing exactly that?
Saturn is very disciplined. I was always told that your Saturn return is a really good time to write books because you have so much inward discipline, or you can work with Saturn who will help to give it to you. But gosh, too much of that, and it really like makes us tense. So how great to have this huge tension release. And it's funny because I have a feeling that Saturn himself, whatever that, energy is, would probably approve. All work and no play is not good for any of us humans. And this is it's a hard time. People are stressed trying to make everything perfect, for their families. Good luck with that. By the way, can I plug antidepressants at this time?
Yes, please. I have
not
a feeling
medical ones.
I have a feeling it'll be much more fun than the usual.
Absolutely. So here's the thing I found out. I was doing some research, and it was clear as a bell. A lot of the substances that we sort of traditionally associate with this time, like for instance, lemons and oranges, right? Or peppermint, ginger, the smell of fresh pine, cinnamon. Did you know they're all natural antidepressants? To me, that makes total sense. Can be a depressing time of year. You don't have enough money, it's dark, it's cold, blah, blah. But gosh, you take a whiff of that fresh pine and that's going to lift your spirits. Take a couple of drops of peppermint essential oil, put it on a hanky and sniff it, or, eat a peppermint candy, which candy canes, they're everywhere. Cinnamon, such a comforting smell. I read once that if you want to sell your home, get a pot with water in it, put some cinnamon in it, and turn it on low, and your whole house will smell homey. Well, you can do that if you don't want to sell your house. I think that hot mulled cider with cinnamon is totally antidepressant. And it's also really comforting, a nice warm mug of it on a cold night. I love that nature has given us what we need when we need it. So, yeah.
What is your favorite Yule recipe?
Oh, wassail comes from the old Saxon term. I think it's pronounced wassail, which means be whole. And so people would toast each other and say wassail, meaning be whole. What a thought. It's very hard to be whole in this culture. We're all kind of fragmented. So wassail, I have a recipe in my which in the kitchen book, but you know what? It's not a hard and fast recipe. You can use just about anything. Cider is a really nice base. That's what I use. And then you add all sorts of spices. I usually cut an apple crosswise to show the little pentacle inside. I put a couple of slices of that in. I throw in some whole cloves. Sometimes I will stud an organic orange with cloves and throw that in. And then you add booze, whatever kind you like. Keep it virgin, for the little ones. But yeah, bourbon for me, oh boy, bourbon and hot cider, it just tastes so good. And it doesn't take a lot to make you feel quite happy.
I was going to say, that sounds like preparation for the Lord of Misrule to come in.
Lampshades on the head.
Yes, I think they may well be happening. So what about food recipes?
Oh, well, okay. I used to be vegetarian, and in the spirit of, confession, I will admit that I'm no longer a vegetarian, and I try to thank the poor dead animals that I eat, but not that it does them any good. Anyway, back in the day, I thought, why should we have a dead animal as the centerpiece of every big feast, like the Thanksgiving turkey, the Christmas goose, the Easter lamb or ham? So I came up with an idea for a Yuletide pie. It's round. It's covered with pastry that you brush with egg wash so that it's golden like the sun. Anything round to honor the sun coming back, to me, makes a really lovely meal. And so you can cut out little leaves or, holly shapes to put on top of it and fill it with whatever vegetables you love. Potatoes, of course, they're nice and filling. calming. Carbs are great this time of year for calming us down. And then whatever others, onion, garlic, carrot, celery, greens. I love lots and lots of fresh greens chopped up. And you just fill a beautiful round pie pan with that, cover it with the pastry and bake it. It's delicious and vegetarian and round like the sun. So yeah, that's one of my favorites.
Well, I don't feel you need to be apologizing for not being a vegetarian. And now that you are eating meat again, do you have a favorite recipe?
It's one of the things I feel guiltiest about eating, and that's pork. It's been proven pigs are as smart as dogs, if not smarter. If you've ever read Charlotte's Web when you were a kid, or if you've seen the movie Babe, the thought of eating pig is really sad, but oh my gosh, there's just something very Yule-tidey about eating pork products. By the way, there's an old carol about that, the Boar's Head Carol. Do you know that one?
I don't.
Oh, well, I don't, a lot of it's in Latin and I don't remember that part of it, but it's something about the boar's head and hand bear I, bedecked with bay and rosemary. And they would carry out this, sounds horrible, this boar's head with an apple in its mouth. Pigs and Yule go way back together. So
they do, because it's the tradition of this is the pig was a most useful animal from the point of view that you could use just about everything it had and do something with it. So you use the whole animal and you've got meat for months. And so it was often around this time that the pigs were slaughtered and the meat was cured. So in time for this feast time, and then lasting through as much of the winter as possible, because you could make sausages, you'd have the bacon, whatever, the cured meat. So it was a very important part of the Yuletide and then Christmas festivities. So yes, poor pigs have had a difficult history, but it is because they so much was done with that pig.
Right. And in a way, the Native American way of treating animals was very similar all across tribes. I mean, you use every bit of the animal, the sinews to sew with, the bones to make tools and instruments to play, every part, the hide, obviously. And yeah, it's very similar. You can use, and also because there's now going to be a time of real hardship in the winter, even though the sun is beginning to come back, it's not growing time. People did not want to keep animals that they could not afford to feed. And that's why they would slaughter them so that they didn't have the expense of keeping them going through the long winter months. And, can you imagine? I mean, people that didn't eat meat from month to month, what a huge feast it would be at Yule to have meat on your table. So, yes. Yeah.
Yes, it's a time in which nothing was taken for granted. And I think that is a spirit which we need to reintroduce in order to feel the appropriate gratitude for everything, and most especially for an animal that has given its life to feed us. So I think that is a very important thing to do, which brings me to contemplation. And you started off by talking about how much you love to sit in darkness for a while and then light the candle. Do you have anything that you do to help stimulate contemplation other than that? Any other ideas?
Oh, a lot of the daily practice that I do is totally about that. And I don't just do it at Yuletide. I mean, I do my morning practice every single morning, but I'll share a practice that was taught to me by a shaman named Rebecca Singer. She has a book on Amazon, if you want to look it up, called Earth Practices. And it becomes especially challenging in the winter. And it's barefoot morning prayers. I go out every morning and stand barefoot. Now it gets tricky when there's snow. And if there is snow, and if I don't want frostbite, I stand on my concrete stoop and say, well, this counts. But barefoot, it's cold. And you really feel the changing of the seasons when you do that. And then you say your prayers, you say hi to Mother Earth and Father Sky, and you announce that you're there, that you're their daughter. And then, you just from the heart speak about what you most long for others, usually not for yourself. I have a prayer list like that of people that I, say prayers for every morning. And some of them know that I pray for them and some don't. And it's a very contemplative practice. And it's very short in the winter.
Very short.
Yes. Yeah.
I think for those who are more, shall we say, monotheistic, and who are looking at, well, they would only pray to their one God, I would say this could easily be adapted, because you are the child of the one God, but you are also of this earth. And I think this earth created by your God. And so then it becomes a practice of celebrating your God as well, to say, I am a child of God. Thank you for the sky. Thank you for the earth from which I come. And you can still do this and be true to your beliefs. And it adds a poignancy and a beauty to your normal prayers.
I totally agree. And just give deep thanks for our lives. It's not
Cait, I'm really sorry, but your sound just cut out there.
Oh no.
Okay.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
It's better?
Yeah. Okay. Sorry.
So yeah, I was just saying it becomes such a sweet practice to give thanks for our lives, because it is something that we really take for granted most of the time, unless, we have a bad diagnosis or something. Other than that, we don't think about what an incredible gift this life is and this planet is. So to be in awe and wonder and appreciation is a beautiful thing. And it's easy to do this time of year. There is such deep beauty about winter, and I just love it.
One more recipe, and this time let's make it sweet.
Oh, plum pudding or winter pies, your choice. Winter pies are easier. Plum pudding takes a lot of chopping and stirring and sitting overnight. So it's in my book, Witch in the Kitchen. But winter fruit pies they're pretty easy. You take whatever kind of dried fruit you like best. So for me right now, it's dried apricots and dried cranberries, raisins, whatever you like. You soak it in some sort of either hot water or bourbon, which I'm fond of, as you can tell. And then you cook it down with some butter and sweetener of choice. I've been using monk fruit because it has like a 0 glycemic index, which is amazing, but it doesn't have a weird aftertaste. So I do that. And then you make your little pastry shells and you plop the kind of creaminess of the cooked down winter fruit into that, and then you bake it. You can make little fancy lattice tops out of pastry. You can just cut out a little leaf out of pastry to put on top. You can have nothing on top at all. And of course, you're going to want to add cloves, ginger, and cinnamon to the fruit. I should have mentioned that. It's so delicious, and it makes your home smell divine when it's in the oven. Oh, I love the smells of Christmas. I think everyone does. The sort of the cinnamon, the nutmeg, the ginger, the whatever, just cloves. Did you know back in the day, people used to make pomanders that take small oranges and stud them all over with cloves and then roll them in a mixture of orris root and cinnamon and cloves and whatever else they had around. And this was particularly for those times when people didn't bathe very often. When they were out in public with a lot of people, they would just take it and sniff it. It smelled better than their neighbors, unfortunately. But now you can make them and put them in your home, and they make your whole house smell just divine. Oranges and cloves, they're 2 of my favorite scents ever. Have you ever made a pomander?
I have, actually, a very long time ago now, but I have. That was fun. I was just listening to you talking about the fruit pies, and of course, in this country, we have the tradition of mince pies, which is very much as you're describing. But I grew up in Portugal, and we had something else, certainly in the south of Portugal. This was a tradition that my mum grew up with, and I, to this day, adore them. And they were like pasties. So, but it was sweet potato, and it was sweet potato with cinnamon, and oh my! And then it's the pastry cases. And these days I put them in the oven. But when I was a child, mum used to fry them, deep fry them. And then it's honey and cinnamon on top. And to this day, they mean Christmas to me. And they are just gorgeous. And I shall be making some of those this year.
They sound delicious. I'm thinking about the American Thanksgiving habit of, mashed sweet potatoes with cinnamon and maybe some citrus and then marshmallows on top. Oh my gosh. So you brought something up that I think is really worth mentioning, and that is childhood memories of this time of year. I think they're so potent. I also know how hard it is for people this time of year if they've had loved ones pass on. That's a tough one because you have all these memories and it's very poignant. But at the same time, what a great idea that we can start having more traditions now for the little ones coming up. I have a granddaughter. I don't know if I'm sure I mentioned it last time. She's 18 months old today. And it's been such fun planning things. She's really young yet. But as she grows, it'll be fun to introduce her to her own traditions that she'll want to keep up when she gets older. So yeah, for you, it's these wonderful sweet potato pasties. They sound great.
Oh, they are. And it's, I have to say that my dog benefits from my growing up, because my childhood experiences rather, because it's through that he gets to enjoy sweet potato cakes that I make for him and his friends. I tell you, they adore sweet potato and cinnamon. I make little cupcakes for them. They love them. So it's, you can play at this time of year with different ideas. If you don't have children, but you have a dog, or you have children and a dog, this is something that's safe for them to enjoy and eat. To make little cupcakes with sweet potato and cinnamon. I think that everyone who has given a dog a present enjoys watching them rip it apart.
Absolutely. Or cats, wrap their catnip in tissue paper and watch them go for it. It's so much fun.
It's these things. Why it's precious for adults is because it reconnects us with our childhood. And particularly if we had happy childhood experiences, it reconnects us with those. And for those of us who had Christmases that were not very joyful, and sadly there are too many of us for whom that is true, it's an opportunity to rewrite the Christmas tradition and make it your own. We do all sorts of things in this house that are our own. And I think many households do that.
Well, one of the things that I think COVID did for us is it forced us to hit the reset button. And I don't think that's a bad thing. It was time for all of us to reimagine the holidays so that they worked for us and healed any wounds from the past and gave us that sense of spiritual nourishment and refreshment that we all need so badly. In my house growing up, my mother was a singer and I sang. I loved to sing. And so we used to just sing all through the holidays. I'm here to tell you, I may be pagan, but I'm not unchristian. And I think that Christmas carols are so beautiful. And the harmonies are so beautiful. So there's always Christmas carols playing in the background here, and I sing along. It's just so much fun for me. So again, I'm cutting off the list of things that I felt I should do, but don't want to do. And I just don't do them anymore. Yeah.
So here we are. And I would say a good summing up of our joint advice for everyone is enjoy the traditions that you love and add a few more that you enjoy because this is a wonderful time to be creative as well, whether you're being creative with the way you wrap your presents or making presents or the way that you decorate your home. Just allow yourself to be a child again, to reconnect with that creativity, which I think for me is probably the reason why I love this season best of all. So on that note, I want to thank you, Cait, for your time today.
My pleasure.
I would recommend that you have a look at Cait's books, and the one that we discussed last time, Witch Wisdom for Magical Aging, Finding Your Power Through the Changing Seasons, is a lovely one for you to also look up. And it sounds like you've got a couple more that are great fun.
I do. Shall I? Yes, here we go. Witch in the Kitchen. Okay, it's recipes and rituals for bringing back a sense of the sacred to cooking and eating. And this one, which you don't have to have children to enjoy, Celebrating the Great Mother. Lots of wonderful ideas for all of the holy days. So yeah, great fun. They were fun to write and they're fun to read.
Wonderful. Thank you once again. I'll be putting links to everything in the description box. And it remains for me to wish everyone the happiest Christmas and Yule season, and a very wonderful new year. Until next time, goodbye.